Hi, I'm Jara, and this is going to be the second entry to my journaling series. Today, I wanted to talk about something that has been pretty, I'd say, a crucial part of my last year of high school, which was letting go. And um, just my personal experiences with it, and it's definitely some advice on how to let go and how to do it in a healthy manner and not in the way that I have done it. Um, just starting out that I think letting go is one of the most difficult things for me in my life so far, because I'd say ever since I was a kid, I really had um, issues with letting things go because of the association I had of it in my mind to equating to losing in some way in certain situations. In basically any situation where I found conflict, um, I found letting go a very difficult task because I didn't want to um, let it hurt my ego, and I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to be seen as a loser. Um, but generally, I would say letting go is usually associated with a fear of some sort, or the difficulty in letting go, I think, is created out of a fear of losing someone, losing yourself, losing the familiarity and comfort that is associated with whatever you plan on letting go, or you know, you think you might need to let go, but you just haven't had the strength to let go of. And I think especially things that you're more emotionally invested in are difficult to move on from. Well, I would say moving on is different from letting go, but letting go of, especially with people. And I think I just want to get into it by breaking this video up into like kind of four sections. They overlap a lot, but um, mostly what I've had experiences with is letting go of people, letting go of relationships, letting go of ideas, and just in generally letting go of conflict. Because I think those are the four major things that I've had to encounter and learn to let go of. Um, with that, I think with people, it is one of the most, I think it's one of the most difficult ones um, to really talk about, because letting go can kind of come in different ways. I think you let go of people for better. Most of the time, it should be for good reason, for either both your mutual benefit or someone that you care about benefiting them. Because um, the people that have been in your life for some time, especially like friends that you've grown up with since, say, elementary school, kindergarten, whatever, um, I think it can be difficult in some senses to let some of those people go, especially with um, how people naturally mature and grow, either away from each other or closer to each other. And I found that, at least with my growth throughout the years, it was a lot more attractive to me to let go of a lot of the friendships that I held on to throughout the years. Um, just because of basically like a fear of either A, not having friends and, being like, I guess, socially outcasted, or like the fact of like upsetting them, that I didn't really want to be friends with them. Um, because, I'm one to avoid conflict after seeing how much conflict really impacts me personally, and I think um, well, we'll get into it later, but conflict has an especially strong hold on me, um, and I was scared, to confront a lot of people, um, or confront the fact that I didn't want to be around some people, even though they wanted to be around me. But um, I'd say growing up with, like, as you grow up and out, you'll have differing interests than you first did when you initially met some of these people. And they might change in some ways that are different than you, or they don't change enough from how they were originally from years ago that kind of it makes it seem like a better idea to just let go of the friendship, or and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be in a bad way where you like confront them and be like, hey, I don't want to be friends anymore. Um, but I'd say a lot of the situations that happen with me, it's kind of just like, you're not um, really on the same page as much anymore. You kind of just distance yourself from each other, and you go find other friends that can relate to you better. And slowly over time, you're subconsciously letting them go. Um, but for the people that are still around and still want to stay around you, um, yet you don't really feel as much of a connection to them anymore, I think it can be more difficult um, to really kind of, you know, move away from these people. And I think most people get the idea that they're just really not as um, desirable, I guess, in a way, um, to people whenever they feel like, letting go of them is just the best thing for the both of them. But a lot of the times, I think they can, you know, can't really see that. And it is kind of like I've been on both ends of it, I would say, and I think uh, it does hurt, especially finding out like certain friends that you want to hang around, and or at least you respect and you want to be around more, kind of just don't really have the same feeling. Um, Slash, I would say in my case, um, you know, people being friends with people that you've hurt or they know of, like, what you've done in your past and stuff. Um, I think in those situations, it's just natural for them to distance themselves from you. And I think it really does take a huge hit to me at my like core in my being. Um, but I would say anytime I've thought about letting other people go, it was mostly for the best, um, and usually not out of like spite, I would say, or because of something they did wrong. I think it was just naturally, um, just the direction uh, the friendships I've had to go. Um, I've truly learned that in the past couple years that a lot of the people that you meet in life are really not going to be around for majority of it. And I think being in high school, kind of trapped in a bubble of being around all these same people all the time, and it's kind of hard to imagine not living a life with them around. And even like people that you've met outside of school, um, well, I would say mostly like family members, uh, their presence is not permanent, and people get distant over time, And I think just letting go of those people to um, benefit both sides is just a natural way of life. Um, but also, I think it's good to let go of people that are exploring like new relationships for themselves too. Especially if you're someone with a friend of the opposite sex, I think it is usually in your best interest to kind of, let them do their own thing. At least from my perspective, I don't really like. I don't know. I don't really like being around. I guess whenever uh, some of my friends that are girls, get into a relationship because I just don't want to feel like I'm like, I don't know, intruding. I guess, or like being threatening in any way. And I don't have any issue with it at all, and I'm sure they don't either. So I think that's just a general like thing out of respect for both of them to like find each other more so and let them live out hopefully happy lives. Um, it's not saying like drop off people that like get into relationships. Um, Even I'd say with like some of my homeboys, I just kind of let them do their thing. Um, I think it's just a good idea to still like be around and be there for them, but respect the space between you and them, especially if it's someone that is of the opposite sex to you know so that they can enjoy their partner or like explore them more rather than um, I guess spending time with me. But I don't really know where that like I think that's generally how I would like um, any of my friends to be with around me, and just out of like a respect thing. I think I might be more like changing on that opinion as I grow older. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good idea to like let some people go for the purpose of them being with someone that they care about. Or I think also, uh, like this is very forward thinking, but whenever I get older and I may have kids or something, um, I think I would not really. I'd try my best to like be okay with letting them go. I don't think I'll ever, at the moment, know how that might feel. Um, but I think, especially growing up, I was quite um, under like an umbrella. I think of my parents. They always wanted to make sure I was safe, my siblings were safe, that we were where we needed to be at the right time, and make sure we're not doing it like anything too late or too far out, or within the range of safety. And I do think that kind of hampered my ability to, I guess, live a lot of the I don't know, like the high school life that is so idealized. I don't think necessarily that like going out and spending time with your friends and like going to the beach and all that stuff. I don't think it's necessarily imperative that you experience it to really get a true feeling of living. But throughout media, you're kind of fed like the same thing over and over again. Like especially being on social media, you see people like hanging out and stuff and doing things that you want to do, and it um, as a kid that was kind of who had parents that were like scared of letting me go. Um, I think even still now, me and my siblings being um, young adults, like they're having to confront it more and more, and they're more comfortable with it. Um, but I think it could really have a negative impact. Um, on, I guess, the like behavior of your children, or of children that I might have, especially if they feel like they're being sheltered and they can't, like, they hear about all this stuff that their friends are doing, or like see it elsewhere and be like, I want to do that. And I think it can lead to an overt reaction that is a result of the parents being more overprotective. Because I've already heard like a ton of different stories, either within, you know, from people I know or like from family of um, situations where the kids would like go out and do something crazy, and usually whenever I would hear it from their side, or I would know like how their parents are, um, you'd understand that like with them being so overbearing and overprotective, um, this desire to live really by chasing more and more, I guess, risky behavior can originate. So I think in that sense, letting go is a good idea for people that are older and have people that they care about, that they um, want the best for. I think it's essential for you to learn to let go of those people so that they can either live out their own lives or be in their own like romantic relationships. And but yeah, with the whole section of letting go of people is also on the opposite end, um, that like you really can't force people to be around you or stay around you, or change to be around you more palatable for you, because you know, as people naturally progress and grow, they grow different feelings and thoughts about you, just based on their exposure, or they think differently um, than they used to when you first met. And like that ideal image in your mind of them shifts and morphs and grows over time, just like you do. And I think expecting them to have the same like idealized image of you in their head all the time um, is just kind of an immature assumption, and trying to keep control of other people um, is just generally a pretty bad idea. And I think I'd say I had some experiences with that, um, because I think as a person, I like personality wise, I think I have a strong compulsion to maintain my composure and control of the things going on in my life. I think um, it originates from my like I think it comes from like a coping strategy of mine to deal with like anxieties and stresses, because you know, as a kid that highly prioritized academics, I wanted to make sure that I was on top of everything was going my way, so I could excel as best as I could, you know, make the people that I want to make proud of my accomplishments and my achievements. So I only thought it logical to bring that logic to other parts of my life, and I think it really had a negative impact, because in a lot of the relationships, and not even necessarily romantic relationships that I had with people, I kind of wanted them, especially if I cared about them more, I wanted them to stay and be around me, and um, people that I liked hanging around, I kind of hoped and wished that they would feel the same way as me. Um, and you know, it was it's just like you can't control other people and the way that they feel about you, and you can't limit them either. That the way that they feel by either denying things or just lying to either them or yourself. I think it's just really not a healthy thing to practice. But with those, I think, losses of people letting you go because of their changing um, positions, I think that it is okay for it to end without really a conclusion, um, or like a sense of closure or an explanation. Um, Even though it is something I think I've really struggled with as of recent. Um, people leave just like leaving out on me. Um, I think, especially in situations where the explanation is either met with or not met with, the explanation is an embodiment of their anchor towards me. Um, and not necessarily like the most well thought out logical explanation. I think in situations like people thinking or considering about letting you go for personal reasons, a lot of the time it's going to be fed by emotion. And um, as someone who prioritizes logic so much, I think it was really hard for me to understand that people that I've emotionally invested myself in and have in them in a way have invested in me. It was hard for me to understand that they could just go and be okay with that, and feel that they want to feel the way that they wanted to feel about me, and think the thoughts that they wanted to think about me for as basically long as they wanted to. Um, and I think accepting that as just a part of life, uh, the illogicalness in it, um, is just part of accepting things, because emotions especially overbear logic a lot of the time. And um, that's not to say that like everything that they feel for letting you go is illogical. I think it's a lot of the time backed up with logical thoughts that transform into emotions. But I just mean like in the moment, expecting something for you on your way out is sadly something you just can't expect. Otherwise, it'll really break you. And I think in those situations, it is it's really hard. I think I still uh, suffer from some of the um, I guess like not necessarily the fallout, but the impact people have left from just up and leaving, um, or getting mad at me and then leaving, or just slowly fizzling out. Um, because I think especially in the past year, like associated. Actually, I wouldn't even say in the past year. I'd say in my entire life, I've associated a lot of my value with how much um, value I have socially to other people and how much people want to be around me. And I think it's especially hurtful whenever there's people that I want to be around. Um, they don't consider the same things of me. It's not the fact that I'm losing out on them as a person that hurts the most. That still hurts a lot of the time. It's more so the fact that I am like personally being, I guess, attacked, or like my ego and my core, or my self confidence, I should say, and my self esteem really tanks in those situations because, um, I think as people we just have a tendency to attach our identity and self worth to other people. And especially whenever you lose those people, it can feel like the end of the world, or, you know, yeah. Um, and I think, especially for me, after so much of it, I would say, after losing one of my friends, um, that I'm like cool with now, um, it really just had like a psychological impact on me, to where I think now I'm in a state where I just don't expect anything from like anyone really, um, in a social sense, like expecting them to want to be around me, or um, be with me, or you'll still even be friends with me, or just like random, or even just talk to me whatever I like talk to them, like respond to DMs and stuff. Um, I just had to stop expecting people, or I didn't have to, but I've felt the compulsion to stop expecting that people feel the same way about me as I do them. And um, it's kind of like a shock, I guess. And I think it's really hampered my ability to be around people anymore. Um, Regardless of like how much reassurance I get, which is usually not as much, because they typically just don't know how I feel about them. But um, yeah, yeah, letting go of people is hard. But moving on to the next segment is the relationships and letting go of relationships. Um, I think it's a really essential thing to understand, and I think it's also sadly a skill that you can really only develop from being in situations where your, I guess, will is tested, um, and your relationship is tested, and your emotions are tested. Because especially, speaking in romantic relationship terms, these are usually the connections that you'll find yourself in that are the deepest and the most emotionally involved. Um, and Learning to let go in this sense is, I think, one of the most difficult things I've had to endure in my life, period. Um, I'd say letting go of the person that I had real feelings for, um, back in like junior year of my high school. Um, Letting go of that was basically impossible, um, to me at the time, and I would put it down mostly to me believing in the fact of, the person that was in front of me being, um, less of a person, if anything, more of like an idol, I guess, um, an idea, which I'll talk about a little bit towards the end of this part, because it's pretty tied into like how things went. But once the relationship had ended, and after I had built up so much thought in my head that things were really perfect and they couldn't go any wrong, and this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Um, which I can say it was definitely not a perfect relationship. There's a lot of bad parts of it that were mainly my fault. Um, being in my first relationship and being in love, especially, um, it was extremely difficult for me to let go of the fact that um, it could end and that it did end um, in January of 2025. And I'd say for a year and 3 months, I just couldn't let go. And I think it's led to some of the darkest periods of my life, and like a huge mental spiral that I had um, throughout that time, because my desire to tell myself that it wasn't happening, and that that I hadn't had lost, I guess, in a sense, that I had experienced loss. I didn't want to confront it, and I didn't want to accept the fact that at some point I'd have to let this person go and be their own person again. Um, I think that fact scared me, um, because I was under the belief that with this person being such an ideal person, how could this happen really? And also the thought that like some sort of close romantic relationship would never happen in my life again, um, or that level of connection would never happen for at least a while, scared me, because I was really alone at the time. Um, During my junior year, I had met some other people and I made new friends, but I I think if I didn't meet her, I would have gone through the entire year just floating and existing and not really living. Um, because from my sophomore to my junior year, over that summer, I had fallen into really it was a really bad depressive rut, that caused me to chase my own like beliefs of myself and learn more about myself, and it really got me into philosophy at the time, um, wanting to know why I was here, why I was put here, why am I living through such a period of time where I have to suffer so much so, and why does it feel like no one else is going through the same thing? And I had become so introspective that I started to like kind of spite the rest of the world, or try to become someone that I really wasn't. I tried to be um, I don't even know. I guess not even tough, really, just hostile. I didn't want to be so infighting as I was in previous years, because I wanted to block other people out, and I don't know, be like this brooding guy in the corner, like Batman or something at the time, because I don't know what was going on with me. Oh, but I wanted to be, or I wanted to have a better understanding of myself, and especially with her coming along um, earlier in the year, so unexpectedly, it really shifted my beliefs about what my life had in store for me, and especially going through my entire school life and social life, not expecting anyone to be even remotely interested in me, romantically, and especially failing in the past of um, pursuing romantic connections with people. I was I was scared. I was like deathly afraid of going back to just looking at myself in the mirror, I guess, and facing myself, um, and being alone, and living again in a world where no one really understood me, and it was just me talking to me in the mirror, and having to confront myself. That was such a scary thing to me, that I didn't want to have to experience, especially when you're going through a breakup. I think it's generally a good rule of thumb to stay close to someone. Obviously, not the person that you've broken up with, but have some sort of support system to help you through it. Because especially if you've invested so much of your time and effort into someone, so much so that you've kind of pushed other people away. It's difficult. It really feels like a fall off, because I think literally in your brain chemistry, um, that dopamine hit of being around someone that you love and adore, and like can talk to them about everything and anything. Once that stops being like registered in your head, you're just gonna like withdraw heavily. And I think on my part, and the person that I was with at the time, I think to a degree we both felt that way. And well, with me, I think it definitely stuck with me so much longer so, um, because of the reason of us breaking up, which was her not being in love with me. Um, with that explanation, at least that we could come up with. Um, if you're not in love with someone, you're not going to be as emotionally invested into them for very long, especially after a breakup, or like ever. Because I think with people that you've likely failed with romantically, it's kind of hard to um, make anything else out of that relationship, other than like situations where the breakup was as not as like meaningful or something. Um, but in our case, we both wanted to stay friends with each other and be around each other because we were still very fond of each other and had a bond, um, that we really hadn't found anywhere else, I think. Um, but a lot of the people that I had talked to, a lot of my friends especially, they were like, you gotta, with that happening, they were like, yeah, that's tough, I'm sorry that happened to you, but you just gotta focus on yourself, move on, and you know pick up a hobby, do something. um, but what they prioritized was being away from the person um, that you were with, because I think it's incredibly crucial that you make that separation with them, post breakup, because if you don't, then obviously, with like the context of a breakup is that nothing is finite, and especially when someone feels some way, and someone feels a different way, um, it's just never going to end well. And in my case, I wanted to stay in love, and stay in love, especially with the idea that things might be able to work, and that I could save this somehow by being somehow more appealing, or being like, yeah, like being it's more attractive somehow, and like investing myself into things that they liked more, so that they would be closer to me, and trying to take up more of their time, and try to be around them as much as I can. But I think in the back of my mind, I subconsciously knew that it was gonna end at some point, and that no matter how hard I could try um, to be the person that they would fall in love with, it was just impossible. Um, and that it would be forever impossible for me to do, just with the nature of love and stuff. Because especially once you've fallen in love before, it is really hard to break away from those criteria and well, I should introduce the idea and letting go of ideas, because ideas, especially in relationships, can have a huge impact on how they go um, normally, and also when they come to an end. Because I was in love with the idea of, growing old with this person, and, just enjoying my life with someone that I could care about and love like unconditionally and stuff. But, you know, if you're invested in an idea and you're so invested in a future that is yet to exist, then you're kind of setting yourself up for heartbreak. And I definitely set myself up really crucially for heartbreak, because um, I wasn't ready to accept that she was gone. Basically, even though we stuck around each other and tried to be friends for quite a while, um, when she broke up, that was it. That was like the end of that. Like, there was no possible chance of me um, getting to where I wanted to be with her. And the fact that I couldn't let go of her and the idea of things working out is what led to so much, I think, pain and suffering. Um, because I think for almost every day of 2025, um, I would cry myself to sleep, um, just to feel some sort of comfort, because especially at night when I think, most vulnerable, I would I had to be real with myself, um, and I would often tell myself that, you know the hard truth of this is not going to work out, and she doesn't love you the same way that you love her. And me having to wrangle with myself in my head, um, and tell myself over and over, day by day, that no, it's gonna work, no, it's gonna work, no, it's gonna work. And I think that ping pong really just degraded my mental, um, because I think over time things got more and more sensitive and more emotional for me, because as time passed, and I would get glimmers of hope from certain interactions, it kind of goes both ways, where if something happened that kind of resembled, maybe something could happen, I would overplay it in my mind and be like, okay, this is still possible. But especially if something bad happened, where she would, well, not bad, but bad to me in the emotional sense, where she would push me away, um, it kind of felt like I was getting stabbed or something. I don't know. It was such a unbelievable pain that I just ate, because I wanted to believe in the fact that, things could still work, and I did that over and over again. And I think degraded my self esteem and my own worth in myself, so much so, to the point where basically anything, um, any interaction was kind of just a test to see if things could still work out. And as time passed, people, their feelings, they change. And especially in situations where uh, two people have broken up for a reason that is kind of unsolvable or unfixable. um, she had warned me more and more, that I had to move on, and that, um, if I didn't, that it would just lead to bad for both of us. And I like heeded those warnings, um, barely, I think, because I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, you're right. That's you're right, and I'd be sad about it in the moment, but then I would just go back, right back to like the delusion of you know things working out, and I fail to see that in those delusions, that and in the fact that things weren't working out, that I was in a way suffering a lot more than I would have if I just had let go. And if I had only let go, then I wouldn't have gone through so much suffering, emotionally and physically, even, because I started neglecting myself in some manners, um, because I would take like everything so seriously of what she like liked in people, and try to optimize myself to be this like ultimate person for her. And I would take things from our relationship that like she enjoyed, like our romantic relationship that she enjoyed, and I would try to like test those things and like try to optimize those things, like my level of attractiveness, especially because I would, over the summer, I would just not eat because I didn't want to seem like fat, I guess. I didn't want to be like repulsive in any way. I wanted to be as attractive as possible. Even though I really didn't work that hard on trying to be attractive to anyone, especially her. Um, in my mind, I was like, oh, if I don't eat, then I won't get fat. Um, if I start dressing so and so in this way, maybe she'll like me better. What if I start listening to music she like? Blah blah blah. Going on and on. And this failure to disconnect and let go of her and just let her live and let both of us live separate, um, ultimately culminated in me just being so obsessed to the point that I couldn't let her leave. Like in my mind, I was like this, like I had believed that she was essential to my being, um, and that's a very extreme like connection. I wouldn't even say connection, like obsession, that I had, and something that I'm definitely not proud of at all. Um, but yeah, it happens, and especially with me. I know, like buzzword, getting thrown around, but as someone who's like anxiously attached, I was attached to her, and I didn't want her to go, and especially I didn't want to like believe that I was inferior in any way to anyone that she could potentially meet in the future. And I think especially I degraded so much of my self-image, because I would only imagine, I'd be like, well, if she doesn't really love me the same, then why? Why do I even try? And why am I even the way that I am? And I'm not attractive at all, and I don't think anyone else could like me if she couldn't feel the same way as me. And, you know, this would all have been avoided if I had just let go and realized that it wasn't worth it, um, for a couple months of like friendship. And I think it would have been a really difficult thing for me looking back to um, separate from her. I think it would have been extremely difficult, and I think things might have still gone bad between us. But I think it is more healthy generally to separate yourself from the person that you have been romantically um, interested in, um, post breakup, because like the feelings will never um, dissipate if you just keep yourself with them. And even if you tell yourself that they will, they won't, because that's just not how humans work, biologically. You'll want to be in a state where you are most comfortable, and always desire that state. So, yeah, I think it's generally in your best interest to learn to let go of people that you have been romantically with. But also, I think it would have been hard for me to do it at the time because we had only been together for a little bit, and I had gotten so connected to her also because of like her story. I was really like I don't know, as like since I was a kid I always had like this idea of me being like um, I guess a hero. I think it's probably just a savior complex of some sort because I wanted to be valuable in a way that was useful to people, and I always wanted to be useful. I always wanted to be someone that people could depend on, and that could, help out whenever people are down. And I think that definitely shows in my personality of especially wanting to help other people out, with like school and stuff, or emotional stuff, or just trying to be there for people. Um, but I had this sense of ego that, like, I was, I don't know, like entrusted to protect her and keep her safe, and especially with her situation because we had met um, a like basically right around the time that she um, discovered that she got cheated on, and I had felt um, that I don't know, it was like my life mission was now to keep her safe and um, keep her emotionally intact, and make her feel loved and stuff because I knew I was capable of it. And especially someone who's as me, like who's very mission driven, it was difficult because I was like, well, I can't um, put my trust into the world that they're gonna feel the same way for her. So I need to be there. I need to, you know, need to be that person that can be there for her. But it's failure to recognize that um, I'm not that. I'm no hero. I'm just a guy, and there's a million other guys that would probably feel the same way. Um, and that, in a sense, I was like not special um, for wanting to, I guess, serve her in that manner. Um, and wanting to be there as that person. So I think that definitely um, made it difficult to let go. Yeah. Um, but with that, with talking about relationships, and especially with me mentioning partially the idea part, but with that, with talking about relationships, and especially with me mentioning partially the idea part, um, to go further into the idea part is that there's a real danger in investing yourself in ideas or dreams or like concepts, um, just because of how like not concrete they are. I don't usually, if you have a dream or like you have an idea, you can't really do anything other than try to guide yourself towards that idea. Um, and I think so many people get so caught up in the idea of something that they forget exactly what they're working for or what's in front of them. Like just how I explained, I was so in love with the idea of being with this person that would be there for me emotionally and support me, and I could support them, and we could live happily ever after with like a bajillion cats or whatever. Um, Falling in love with that idea inherently made a lot of the moving on process and just the health of the relationship worse because once people, especially whenever people stray away from that idea, um, it can really feel like you're like losing in some manner. At least that's how I felt. And once you feel like you're losing, you're gonna like scramble to try to correct things, and usually that just makes things worse. Um, but with ideas, that could also just mean like wanting to like the idea of who like your future partner could be. Um, I think people get caught up in like creating this so ideal person in their head that like they have to check so many boxes that it's almost nearly impossible for them to encounter someone like that. And especially with those criteria coming from either influences from the people that they know, especially like friends or something, um, or like past people that they've been with. Um, I think there can be like real conflicts in the people that people want to be with. Um, like recently, I had just seen like a video of people saying, or like a guy talking to his homegirl about um, like dude she's interested in, and she was like the criteria they gotta be at least 6'4", but she was like like 5'2" or something. Really, she was shorter. Um, and what he had explained is like the people that are that tall are typically probably not going to be going for people of your height, and the fact that the girl was complaining so much about it that she couldn't find someone about like that is that her criteria or her idea of someone really couldn't match her reality. Um, and I think that just comes with any relationship, with the idea of wanting to be with someone. The idealism in uh, relationships, or even just like friendships, can really harm the relationships that you do have with like the people around you. Um, and yeah, expectations are dangerous, and especially ideas, and not learning to let go of them. Because if you can let go of those ideas, then I think you'll also be truly open and like free to experience more people and be around more people. Because whenever you have like set ideas of who you want to be around, um, like in your future, or like set ideas for who you want to be with romantically, I think it's still good to like have like criteria, obviously, that people need to satisfy, but having your standards so specific, I think, um, or trying to go for perfection, which I would know because I'm quite the perfectionist, is just generally not a good idea. And I think it can lead to you like driving yourself mad over um, things that don't exist, people that don't exist, um, ideas. And especially in my situation where I couldn't let go of the idea of this person not being with me anymore, um, it led to like real like suffering. Um, so much so I think like it threw me in like the darkest depression I had ever been with, and like had made me the most suicidal that I had ever been with, been in my life. And um, it also kind of just harmed other parts of my life, by not learning to let go of that. Because with my friends, I had always looked for someone to lean on, um, because I think even now, um, I can identify emotions really well, but really truly processing them and allowing them to like sit and be in my mind is a really, really difficult thing that I couldn't really manage by myself. So I would always look out to other people, and usually that would entail me like trauma dumping, or like just being a downer all the time, because I wanted to talk about how I was feeling like 24/7, because I just didn't know where to go with my feelings. And, with some of the friends that I had, I wanted to emotionally be vulnerable with them because, that's what I was taught to be like in recent years, especially in my life, especially with my parents being taught to, like, bottle that shit up. Um, and not necessarily bottle it, but like not directly them telling me that, but like, through their like parenting style and just life in general. Growing up as a guy, they're like an emotional man is sometimes not seen as a man, and I think that stigma's going away. But even now, I think I suffer from the idea that my emotions can cause real harm just by me being vulnerable, um, and not being able to process them by myself. I think it really hurt a lot of the friendships that I had, and some people straight up just got tired of me and didn't want to hear it from me anymore, and didn't want to be around me. And while it hurt at the time, I think I entirely understand why those people felt that way, and I really have no one to blame but myself in those situations. And I think if I let go of the idea of, like, things working out, because even post breakup and post us not talking to each other, I was still so obsessed with the idea, like, okay, well, this is kind of just like a setback. There's gonna be no contact for some time, and then things will, like, get right back on track, and we could be friends, and live happily ever after. But um, even not wanting to let go of the idea that she would just not be around for the rest of my life was just so difficult, and led me to going to people about my emotions that I really shouldn't have. Um, and I think it's sadly had like a negative effect to the point where, um, especially now, the reason why I'm making these videos is just for the fact that I don't really feel like many of my friends are emotionally willing to, like, be there for me um, in any greater capacity. And I still, like, that's not to say that none of them are. A couple of my close friends, they're like, oh yeah, I'll be there for you. If you need someone to talk to, I'm always here. And I appreciate, like, that, like, to the end of the earth, because, as someone who, like, never really had an outlet before, I think it's really good. Um, and a really, like, considerate thing to do. But I think I don't know if it's necessarily traumatized, but, like, pushed back into, like, that hole that I used to be in of, you know, thinking that my emotions only really cause harm to other people, um, by me being vulnerable, and that it would just be best if I kept it to myself or spoke it to myself. Um, I think that truly I had to let go of ideas. Otherwise, I would never be free in my mind from um, these fantasies I'd made for myself, these delusions, these illusions that I had created. Because also with the idea part is that and I think it's really a show of how, like, much my mental had degraded. It had gotten to a point to where I was having, like, nightmares and dreams, or not dreams. I guess it is just nightmares, and kind of like, I don't know. I'd have, like, moments where there would be stillness, and I would just be with my thoughts, and one thing would lead to another, and I was being antagonized by myself just so often, um, because of what I had done, and especially in uh, the romantic relationship I was in, like, in the time that we have not been talking to each other. Um, for a large part of it, I had kind of, like, I don't know, my brain was kind of like filling in the gaps because I had not let go of anything already. Um, But over time, I had kind of like thought more and more about it, and I was like, well, this would only happen because of the way that you are. Maybe you should think about what you've done. And then once I did, it wasn't really in a healthy manner, and led me to thinking that this is all my fault, and you know, um, it's only gone this way because of everything that I've done. And it wasn't really her, the way that she felt. You made her feel this way. You created this. You created your own suffering. You deserve to suffer. And especially how I know it was messed up was because it would sometimes be in like her voice. I just imagine her talking to me in that way. Um, or like, especially for the friends that I'd made that I had hurt and they had to let me go at some point. I imagine them like screaming at me and stuff, especially in my dreams. Um, and I kind of just did that to, I guess, justify my suffering in my brain. And I had to, I guess I felt in my mind that I had to keep telling myself this stuff in order to ward me away from the ideas that I just couldn't let go of. And I think now I'm to a point where I don't really believe in those ideas anymore. Um, I don't believe in them at all. But I now have to like combat myself in a way and not let myself just tear myself down, so much so, um, and degrade my own self worth and stuff just because of a situation that happened. Um, and yeah, I think I was gonna talk about conflict, but I think I covered conflict so much so in the other parts of this video. I can talk about it briefly at least, but with conflict, I think it would just be mostly arguments. I think they are sometimes underplayed, and I think they could really expose a lot of issues in relationships. Um, Whether it be romantic, family, familial, or like friendship. I think the conflict that we do face in life, I couldn't, or at least with my experience with conflict, is that I really couldn't let go of it growing up because I didn't want to be a loser. I didn't want to not come out on top, and that usually led to me being super argumentative with my brother on things, and we still really are to this day. Not for that same purpose, but back then, and that would kind of transpire also into friendships that I had, or quote unquote friendships, more so just like people I'd met. Um, Whenever I'd come into conflict with them, I would always want to get like, I don't know, like the last laugh or like the last word in, just to feel like I was, I don't know, I had won, like I was superior in some way. And I can tell you that if you don't get a lock on that now, especially in your like younger, more formative years, but even if you're older, I think it's a beautiful idea to really like consider how you approach conflicts. Because if you don't let go of them, then they will only fester in your mind and like constantly repeat themselves and just lead to you being in more and more pain and like more and more emotion that I don't think that you should experience. And especially with run-ins I think I had with like people that would not necessarily bully me but just be super inconsiderate and kind of assholes. They, it would lead me to like crashing out and just like going off on them and wasting my time and getting to a point where it was just really unnecessary. And I look back at those moments and I see my anger and the fact that I couldn't let go of whatever menial thing that I was arguing about. And I saw how much it affected me, and it really, over the years, made me reject the idea of that. Because I think also a lot of conflicts are unnecessary. Um, in the fact that they could really be just avoided entirely or dealt with properly if people let go of the fact that they were emotionally like felt attacked, um, and like they can come back to it like composed and like approach the person and be like, hey man, I'm sorry, so and so, or not even apologize. You just be like, hey man, I just had an issue with you on this, and things got a little bit heated. Or even not approaching people about the issues that you had with them. I think that letting go can also entail just you freeing yourself um, from certain situations of conflict. Because especially with like online strangers, I never, never think it's worth it just arguing with people online about um, like the stupidest of things, like on TikTok or whatever. I think it's just really a waste of time. But I think also um, with conflicts, to let go of things, kind of a lot of the time you're just gonna have to confront it, and especially with the people that you care about, I think it's like incredibly crucial that you approach arguments more importantly, because I think especially if you've noticed like people around you that have relationships where um, the couple is so argumentative all the time, even in front of friends and whatever. It's because there's usually greater underlying issues in the relationship that are just not being met, and I think that can really erode um, the love and connection people can feel by just not approaching conflict and learning to let go of things. Um, like especially because like it can definitely lead to escalation in some manners. Like I don't know, some small thing um, that has happened between a couple, like someone didn't take the trash out, could just tumble and snowball into such a huge issue, but not because of whatever it started from, but mostly just issues that they've had, and learning to be mature and go up to that person and let go with them, I think, is important, and just a general life rule of thumb. But also with letting go, I think letting go of anything, it is okay to um, miss that thing, miss that someone in your life later on, especially if it's a thing that might not be mutual. Um, I think it's okay for you to like think back to them and be like, this is this was a good time and I enjoyed my time there, while still recognizing that they're not really meant to be in your life for the rest of time. And I think that's something more so I've realized recently, um, that I don't know, I just couldn't see before, was the fact that not everyone could be in your life forever, and especially a lot of those people that you do meet earlier on will grow into bigger and greater things, and you know you can't really you can't always be there all the time, and letting those people go and missing them is okay, um, because especially for situations where you were still in like the moral right, and this person had violated you, or this person had made you really mad with what they did. If you're healing in a sense, um, I don't think you can expect to just let go immediately and be emotionally shut off and like, oh, I don't care. They can do whatever they want, be with whoever. I don't care. I think you really do. It is a positive thing to let emotions get to your core, and so you can process them. Because if you don't, then it's just gonna like get worse and worse for you if you just try to ignore the fact that you are hurt, and that you do miss this person, even if they're bad for you. I think you have to kind of just consider it, go through it, in order to like really be free, and also understanding that that is not necessarily going to be a linear thing. um, it's not going to be consistent, because I know for a fact that a lot of the time throughout my um, process of letting go of things, is that it comes in waves. You really miss this person, you want to be with them. Next week you could be like, it's none of my business. Things were better this way. Logically, I think I'm okay with being like this, and then it goes back and forth. But if you just if you let the waves crash um, onto the shore, I think at some point, they'll die down, and you won't even notice that um, the waves are coming, and it's just going to be peace and serenity and still waters in your mind. Um, and also with letting go, I think it's not a good idea to wait for the letting go to happen. I think it's best to be active on it. Um, Especially with closure. I think a lot of people expect, and I definitely expected, for there to be a sense of closure that I would get from having one more conversation, or like, one more text, one more whatever. But I think accepting the fact that that is not necessary for you to feel like you again. Um, I think it's incredibly important, because especially in those situations when you really consider it, it's like if you're placing like all your ability to control your emotions onto one interaction that is not guaranteed, you know, how does that make sense at all? Because like it is your emotions, and you're trying to depend on someone else to dictate those emotions based on their reaction. Um, so yeah, um, find closure in yourself. Don't find it in other people when you have to let these people go. Uh, and I think the most important thing is that letting go doesn't necessarily mean that you will forget every single detail about the person that you are letting go. Um, at least in like people that you've gotten close to. It is probably gonna stick with you for the rest of your life. I think I'll definitely remember like the events of my first relationship for a long, long time. Um, and I think by accepting the fact that you won't forget, is the only way that you can live with those truths and truly be yourself. Um, because you won't be trying to avoid some sort of like repressed trauma in your brain, or repressed memories, I should say, or traumatic memories um, of your emotions. Because by like believing that, I'm just gonna forget about them, it's kind of just immature, because you're just ignoring it and not confronting it. And at some point, it's gonna like show in the other things that you do in life, that you are still emotionally impacted by things. Um, so, not forgetting, I think, is imperative to letting go. Because if you do remember, and you're still capable of keeping that distance, and recognizing that this person necessarily shouldn't be in your life forever, um, you've done it. I think you've really achieved the state of letting go, and then you won't even think about it. And also, a general rule of thumb is to give yourself time. Be patient with yourself. I know it took me so long for me to land at the point that I am now, because I just didn't understand my emotions and wanted to stay in a place where I was emotionally um, burdened, just out of fear. But getting out of that can take months, years, and I think even like people that kind of get themselves down, it's like, oh, it's been like it's been 6 months and I still care about this girl. I wonder what that means. I think it's incredibly normal um, for that to happen, especially if you've had a deeper emotional connection with someone, and expecting it to just go away. by taking the advice of like your friends or something is not necessarily the best idea. I think you need to give yourself the time to grieve, and you can reflect over them without like trying to relive whatever you had with them, and giving yourself time so that you can heal. And I think, especially in quote unquote healing, um, I don't think it's necessarily like a thing that you can like officially say. Like even me, um, to say that I'm healing would kind of just be a disservice to how complex like a person can be emotionally, because I think I could um, say all these things and do all these things and be like this, um, which is in a fine state. Um, but I think definitely beforehand, I would have times, and I still do now, like have memories that I look back on and be like sad over, and um, you know, I reflect on, and even antagonizing myself still, and having these traits of like day one since bad things happened to me. Um, I think to say that I'm like truly fully healed would take a lot longer than I think. Um, Sorry, there's an letting myself just say that I'm fully healed, and by announcing it, I think is inherently contradictory to the fact of healing, because I don't think it's something that I should have to announce for it to be true. And I think it's just like a state that I'm in, whether I'm healed or I'm not. Um, but yeah, give yourself time, and don't like set expectations for the fact that you should be like over someone at some point. Um, Even if it's not even romantic, even if it's like a friend that you've had for a while, and like things turn sour, don't feel bad. I think that's just part of being human, being emotional. Yeah. But to conclude, um, letting go is not necessarily a one-time thing, and I think it's an ongoing thing that we'll have to all deal with in our life at some point, whether we like it or not. And by shying away from it, I think we are doing ourselves a disservice, whether it be in romantic relationships, familiar relationships, just friendships, people that you don't know, even strangers, by not learning the power of letting go of things that can really get to you. Um, you know, by not doing so, you leave out a lot of room for a better life. I think you can like create a lot more new experiences and experience a lot more healthy relationships um, by learning how to let go despite its difficulty. And it's just something that you'll have to get used to throughout time to really appreciate. Um, and I think that really the true piece of letting go is learning to accept that you cannot change everything in your life. You cannot control everything in your life. And the fact that you are able to still keep moving and, you know, keep on going after the fact of realizing that, I think truly shows that you understand what it means to let go and the benefit of it, and how much it can benefit your life by just learning simply how to let go. But yeah, I love y'all. Take care.